This month, BlackMagic Design released a public beta as well as a walkthrough of all the updates for DaVinci Resolve Update 17. It's been a little while since we've had a full new version upgrade, and I wasn't really sure what they would have added, but I honestly think that this kind of starts a new chapter for Resolve and for the stuff you can do with it and the flexibility coming from a workflow having used Premiere, After Effects, and things like that. This kind of addresses a lot of the things a lot of us wanted to see in the software in terms of quality of life adjustments, effects, optimizations, layout, and there's a whole lot that I won't necessarily cover because I don't think they're necessarily relevant to my audience, to YouTube content creators or live streamers looking to use it for their video edits or things like that. So I will have the full walkthrough from BlackMagic Design linked in the description below, but it's like a 2-hour stream with a lot of features that you probably aren't going to want to see. So I'm going to run through what I think is the coolest stuff in this update relevant to who I assume is watching this video. And these won't be in any particular order, but I will try to group them up based on relevance. So I went ahead and updated here. You can download the beta for free in the description below. And go ahead and upgrade. Keep in mind though, I would not recommend upgrading your system if you are in the middle of a project. If you're in the middle of a big project, you don't want to change versions because they could break any number of things or introduce bugs that you will just have a bad time going back and forth between versions. I've been there. You don't want to do it. Before I jump into the top features of the Resolve 17 update, let's hear from our sponsor. You know what else is awesome? My Discord server, where you can get free downloads of some pretty awesome stuff. I have an 8K ready classic 2008 YouTube video player template for Photoshop if you want to build your own little retro YouTube looking layouts. I just released a new analog vibe stream pack with a bunch of graphics that I captured and built on real VHS tapes for your stream, for BRB scenes, webcam overlays, things like that. So that's pretty cool. We've got some extra scripts for video editors and things like that, and we'll be adding more and more over time. So join our awesome community of people over on Discord to get support for tech, to join and chat about streaming or retro games or content creation or a plethora of nerdy topics, as well as just generally hang out with us and have a good time. That's eposvox.gg/Discord. Join us today. I'm EposVox, your stream professor, and this is DaVinci Resolve 17 public beta. Now, honestly, at a first glance, it probably doesn't look very much different than the normal Resolve you're used to seeing, but there's some cool updates and settings and stuff that we will cover. They have not fully fixed the issue with Windows scaling, so I use 200% scaling for my videos here so that you can see what the heck's going on in 4K. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty difficult. And so it's a little bit more cramped and like bubbly than you're probably used to. But as I posted on Twitter, if you try to override that and use like a slightly lower DPI scaling for it, things like these pop-up menus and stuff just completely break, and they don't do that in the default scaling mode. So I'm just going to run with this for now. First and foremost, we want to take a look at the settings menus before we go like too far anywhere else. I don't believe a ton has changed in the normal Resolve settings, but in your per project settings, which of course you can save presets for up here, I don't use that enough myself, you have some slightly updated features. So down here under optimize media and render cache, as well as working folders, you'll notice there's a couple extra entries. They have revised their proxy workflow to actually make it quite a bit more usable. So you have separate formats and resolution options for your optimized media, which you choose in the bin, right-click, generate optimized media, as well as proxy media, which is generally done through the playback proxy mode menu, which will give you a lower resolution but easier to playback timeline previews without changing the actual media that, say, your render uses. And so then you also have separate output locations for the proxy generation versus your cache. So that's pretty cool to see, as well as LUTs are kind of stored in a different place. So we're gonna jump to the color tab, but then we're gonna jump back real quick because previously in your project settings, under color management, you'd have to go to open LUT folder and then make a new folder for all the LUTs you want to use, put it there, click save, and then relaunch your project in order to update LUTs, and that is no longer the case. Now you have this LUTs, which I think was kind of already here, but you have a LUTs gallery viewer, which will give you real-time previews of the LUTs, or it's supposed to. There we go, yeah, real-time preview of the LUTs and things like that. But these can automatically kind of update as you change it. So you can go over here and go to DaVinci Resolve Preferences. Under General, LUT locations, you can just add a bunch of custom folder locations, and then when you save it, it will refresh and automatically update in relatively real time. You still have to manually trigger it, I believe. But then you can do that without having to relaunch your projects and stuff. So if you're kind of working back and forth with a colorist or making some tweaks or working with someone else, you can get access to your LUTs a lot easier than you maybe could have before. Now, real quick, I want to mention that they have made quite a few revisions to the cut page here. I am not a fan of this workflow on the whole. I see how it's beneficial for dailies or for TV show work or even movie work or what have you, but for my normal day-to-day YouTube work, I just have never really gotten used to it. However, they have made some updates to it that make it a lot more usable, and they have paired it with a new physical device called the BlackMagic Speed Editor. And this is basically like a shuttle jog on steroids. It's got a mini little keyboard attached to it. It's got all the functionality, and they spent like an hour demoing it in the BlackMagic video. Again, will be linked below. I honestly see the appeal of this with this workflow now, and I've considered looking into it. It is, as one of my Twitter followers described, IBM's mechanical Stream Deck. It's definitely an older school kind of way of working, but if you are looking at taking in a lot of clips and quickly trimming them and adding them to the timeline, this is a very common workflow, and that will help you speed through it. And the best part is it is the same cost as a DaVinci Resolve license, and they are running a promo. It's not live at the time of recording, but they're running a promo where if you buy a license for DaVinci Resolve and you need to do the activation cards through some of their authorized third-party retailers, which I believe B&H is one of them, so I'll have that linked below. If you buy a copy of Resolve, you get the Speed Editor Shuttle Jog for free, which is pretty cool. So I definitely recommend if you're looking to upgrade to Studio at some point and you've been working with Resolve free, I would hold off until that promo goes live. That way you get something that could be very beneficial to you for free. But yeah, changes to the cut page that I'm not even going to begin to try to show you because I don't even use myself. The inspector tab here has been kind of upgraded. You can see there's a lot more stuff. There's a lot, the UI elements are a lot smaller. We have a lot more control over things. They've added AI-based smart reframe where you can just automatically have it reframe based on, actually I need to cancel that first. You can have it automatically try to reframe based on what it detects to be the object of interest. So it'll analyze your clip here and then potentially spit it out. This has been useful for especially situations where you're recropping and reformatting your image for social media where you need to post in vertical or 1:1 aspect ratio formats. Premiere advertised this a heck of a lot with the recent NVIDIA updates, and I showed it at CES and things like that. And it's kind of cool. What's interesting here, though, is we'll do the auto one, but there's also a manual point where you can kind of set up a manual tracker, and then it will track an object of interest based on the tracker, which could be a lot more powerful for those of you looking to have a more manual control over the process. You can see here by zooming in a little bit on a clip of just me so that it has a reason to reframe if we play it back now, and it automatically does keyframing for this, so you have manual control over tweaking it after the fact. But we can play it, and you can see here it's automatically basically doing what the NVIDIA broadcast tools do that I showed previously, where it's automatically just following my face, which could be a pretty cool effect for some of you. You can see here it just looks like a hand cam, just like directly tracking my face, which is pretty neat. Like, I'm pretty sure I see myself even in my content using that feature in the future. However, if we undo it all, and keep in mind, it is just doing it with transform keyframes, which is pretty cool because you have full control over it. I can go over here to reference point, and now we can drag a tracking box kind of. We can even do it kind of like over my eyes here, and then maybe zoom in even more, drag it right there. And then we say reframe. It's going to analyze the clip and do all of this all over again. Now you can see here, it is strictly following my eye line, which is pretty neat. There have been quite a few shots where I am adjusting framing a little bit and I have to manually keyframe the movement to match my cropped in zoom versus the movement in the shot, and having this extra tracking where I can put it over top the product I'm shooting or something for B-roll, this could actually be pretty beneficial. Obviously the examples I'm showing are just kind of goofy, but it does the job for what I was aiming for. So that's pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and reset this. You can also see we've got things moved around a little bit here. We've got composite mode moved down here with keyframing. It's all on its own, so you can also toggle it on and off pretty quickly. Dynamic zoom is more or less the same. We now have speed change enabled in the actual inspector, so you can get some more fine-tuned controls of that here. I don't know why it's not enabling for me here. Maybe you have to still go in and change. I'm not sure exactly why, but that's obviously something you can control. Or well, I guess it is enabled. You just can't toggle it on and off here. Then you, of course, have normal stabilization. What's really exciting is under retime and scaling, most of this is stuff we've already seen before. However, under resize filter, we now have full access to all of the resize modes that were available in Fusion, which means for retro game captures, for example, you can use nearest neighbor scaling natively directly on the timeline in the inspector without having to go out to Fusion, saving you a ton of time, getting more pixel accurate scaling. And if you have specific needs for all of these other ones, which honestly I don't know what half of them do, you have the option available there as well. Heck yeah. You can also see under the inspector, we have a lot more columns. So you have the usual video and audio, but now you have an effects tab for whenever you do add effects, which includes both OFX and ResolveFX filters. You've got transition controls, just automatically placeholdered here, image-based controls, and file information. So you can go ahead and manage metadata and stuff all right here without having to click out to other menus, which just save you a few extra clicks. Something else you may have noticed as I've had this open here, kind of as a teaser, the effects library here actually looks pretty different. So I'm gonna go ahead and make it full screen and drag it out a little bit so you can really see what's going on. So this is the normal section of effects, transitions, all of that, but you can see we now get previews of what the actual effects do. And you can see here, as I mouse over it, we're getting real-time preview of those effects, transitions, and so on. And that's adjustable through this 3 dots hover scrub preview in case you don't want it for some reason. But you can see here, I can sit here and preview what these transitions will look like. It can work with the built-in ones, and I can even come down here to some Fusion transitions, and they will be beefier to load and kind of lag a little bit more. But once it does want to kick in, you can preview these as well. Not all of them have been working so far, and that's fine, because these are, again, Fusion. They're very GPU heavy, but you can at least get a visual preview of what they will look like, even if you don't get a real-time playback of the transition. And it's not just transitions. You can come down here to Open Effects and find some of the filters and get previews of some of that as well, which is really freaking awesome and saves me a ton of time, especially because I have imported a lot of these transitions from preset packs and things like that that I have either bought or found online, and the names of them are not super useful. And so I'm usually adding them and removing them before I figure out what they actually are. So now this saves me a lot of time here. Now in the Open Effects tab, they have changed a lot of things to be ResolveFX, which get additional GPU acceleration, are supposed to run a little bit snappier and faster and all of that. But you also get some new effects. So I'm gonna go through some of these. They're not all new necessarily, but they are supposed to be more optimized. So for example, I believe false color is new. So you can just slap that on a clip so you can get an idea of where your exposure levels are supposed to be, adjust based on that without needing a separate monitor that has false color on the input signal or anything like that, and then just delete the effect and you're good to go. And you also can just mouse over it to quickly get a glance at false color for your image as well. You've got stuff like dehazing, you've got adding in contrast pop, I guess, chromatic adaptation. I don't know what half of these mean, to be honest, but there's a lot of cool stuff here. You've got more generators. Some of them do take a little while to load, but that can load your actual color palette based on the scene in the frame, which is actually pretty cool, because if you're looking to make graphics, which I do, make graphics based on the visual layout of your actual scene, you can get the color swatches for that right there. I just now discovered this. That's pretty neat. They now have, which my buddy Patrick Sterling, who's been doing some work helping out on the channel, and you may see more of him on the channel soon, he just figured out how to do this in, well, published how to do this in 16, but in 17 they have finally added chroma keying, green screening to the edit page. So you no longer have to do all these weird, really complex processes you had to do to green screen in Fusion in the first place. You can now just drag the key or effect to your clip, go over here to effects, and then you choose the specific color that you want. So if I color out this yellow, first you need to come down here to Open FX overlay. There we go. Now so under here by default, it's usually set to like transform or smart reframe, whatever you used last. If you change the preview interactive mode to Open FX overlay and then choose your controls to add a color, we choose the yellow, it keys out that yellow. You can add colors to it. So say I want to add the red too, it starts keying all of that out. You can subtract, you can feather, and you get full control over chroma keying built right here into the edit page without complex multi-node processes and stuff that has been really scary to me within Fusion, which is pretty neat. They've got a lot of cool effects here, light effects, lens reflections, You can preview them all. They do have a ResolveFX Refine filter here with Beauty. This is different than the one available in the color palette, or in the color tab, however, as it's some of the similar effects. You got auto mode here or advanced mode, but you don't have the actual face tracking. So in the color mode, here, I can go ahead and show you here. If I make a new node, oh, these are all sorted differently. I'm just gonna go face, there's face refinement, which is a beauty effect, but then you analyze and it actually tracks your face and figures out where your face is, and then you can do specific retouching to the lips, to the eyes, to whatever, and I have messed with that quite a bit. That is technically different than the beauty filter here, which just kind of adds, like for example, if you add smoothing, it adds it to the entire frame. So it's not quite the same, but it's handy to have if you just need like a super quick effect or just looking to make quick things. There's a dead pixel fixer. If your camera sensor has a dead pixel, you can remove chromatic aberration, sharpening effects. There's a lot of cool little like filters. So for example, under stylize, there's prism blur. I have been trying to recreate an effect I use in my Red Giant suite, which is incredibly slow for chromatic aberration. If I actually just turn off the blur, I can then adjust chromatic aberration here and get the effect that I want. And it's actually fairly fast. I mean, it's not showing it here while I'm recording. There we go. Like, it's happening in real time. It's not running at 5 FPS like the Red Giant plugins are. So that's pretty cool. You got scan lines. I believe those were in there before, but they were not ResolveFX. And finally, you have a vignette that's actually available just in the effects instead of having to do crazy power window management and all of that. You just have a vignette. Common sense. Now, there's a lot of these in here. We can go on forever. Camera shake, lens distortions. You can have the dent effect, so you can get the little like Linus Tech Tips look of making your face bulge out when you say something stupid. There is one effect that I really wanted to show before I finish here, and I'm kind of annoyed that I didn't see it already because I was very excited. Here it is. Okay, so for example, I'm going to completely reset transform on this clip. If you are working with a clip that does not have the same aspect ratio as your timeline, and this is the only clip that is, or you know, you only have a few, instead of having, what I normally have to do is I have to duplicate the clip, I have to make the bottom one bigger, and then I have to apply a blur to it just to get the blurred out background version. You don't have to do that with this anymore. Instead, there is now a blinking fill. And now you can change the exact like frame and crop and the field of view of the blurred out version, and you can actually crop even further. So if I just want like a 4:3 version, and it will apply a stretched, blurred out version of it behind it without needing extra tracks, without needing copies of the clip to manage. And then you get full control over the zoom mode, over the drop shadow, over blurring, blending, all of that. Saves me a ton of time and keeps your timeline a lot neater. And there's a dedicated drop shadow effect as well. Lots of cool stuff you can play with here. They added like over 27 new effects, and they're all supposed to be optimized a little bit better, yada yada. Pretty cool stuff there. And again, I love that you can just premiere, and I love that you can just preview pretty much any of this in real time. Like, that is mind-blowing to me. There's one other effect I wanted to show just for fun under the transform section, which has camera shake, general transform controls, which I don't actually, I do know why. Okay, I have been waiting for this moment for the past 2 years. I bought my BlackMagic camera in October 2018, started using Resolve then, and the biggest issue I have run into moving from Premiere and After Effects to Resolve is when I am doing screen captures and I want to zoom in, easing those keyframes and blur and applying motion blur to that transform effect has basically been either way too convoluted or impossible in Resolve. They have added that right here. So for example, if I want to zoom in, I set my keyframes for position and zoom, come over here, zoom in, adjust my position, and now I can apply motion blur. I can crank that sucker up. Now, if we go back to the original keyframe and we play it back, we get a nice, smooth, subtle motion blur applied to that zooming motion, which isn't super obvious on live action footage. But ideally, this entire video will be edited with it. So you can compare to my previous tutorials recently and see, hopefully, that smoother effect. And you've got advanced options for edging and blending and alpha and all of that. So that is really freaking cool. The effect I actually wanted to show you was this video collage effect. You can apply it to clips, and then you can bring in other clips. So actually, I've already done this here. I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna come over here. So you apply it to your different clips, and then you can tell it that you're creating a tile, and then under the tile menu, you can adjust which tile is which, and you can create quick little video collages, and you get customization over the shape, the size, all of that, to create split screen effects and split screen gaming videos and all of that a lot easier. Now, playing it back in real time, it's going to be a little chunky. That even lagged my OBS for the first time in this video, but some cool stuff there regardless. One other cool feature that they added is you can now export individual timelines, so just this scrap timeline but not the rest of the project, and then import that into other projects. So for example, if I have a real cool intro sequence that I don't want just the full render of, I just want the original timeline of that I made in one video, instead of having to just export that or keep opening this whole big project, I can export that, just that timeline, and import that into a new project, edit, revise from there, or make it its own project and continue to render out from there, which is really handy. Over in the color tab, they have changed the look of the color wheels, which looks a little scary, but for the most part, they perform the same. They just look a little more clear, but they also added an HDR color grading workflow, which allows you complete control of the entire HDR workflow. You've got zones to control, you've got the color wheels for your highlights, your darkness, your global control, the tone of the image. You can lock in the tone of the image, so if I change global levels or color, you can actually come in here and bank global with color wheels so that the overall bounds of your color and your luminance rather are locked into place. You can actually save presets here. I didn't know that was a thing. Can you save presets in the normal color wheel? No, you cannot. That's annoying. I mentioned the speed editor shuttle jog approach. They also have a new desktop module for editing, or console for editing in Fairlight for audio, and they've made some huge updates to Fairlight, letting you edit thousands of audio tracks at once, a lot more controls, a whole lot of stuff. I have not really messed with Fairlight a lot, but I want to get into it this upcoming year as I improve my sound design. And they have a new upcoming Fairlight desktop console that lets you integrate with that and even have dedicated video out of that just for the Fairlight UI. However, it's $3,000, so I'm just gonna use the mouse and keyboard to learn this, because yikes. But they have that improvement, and they also, with all of these changes to the UI and stuff, have a new set of keycaps for the DaVinci Resolve panel color grading tools. Now I just have the little ripple tangent, and I don't even really use that a ton, but the updated keycaps and control buttons alone for these panels are gonna be $595, $600 for some updated keycaps. I know that all of this is to subsidize the cost of developing the software. I know that this is primarily for major Hollywood studios that have the money to throw at it, or the grants or whatever, and they buy it once and it's a cost they eat and don't have to eat again. But holy cow, I'm not buying it, of course, but what? I just my jaw dropped when I saw that they're charging $600 for some keycaps. So one final issue that I was really hoping they would fix in one of the either 16 or 17 updates to DaVinci Resolve that they still have not is the normal effects in your effects tab here under the edit window. Generally speaking, do not have presets. Under here, I have video collage. There's no button to save this as a preset, and I find that incredibly annoying and incredibly just absurd, because you can add them to favorites, and you have this little favorite column here so you can recall quickly. So with transitions, you can actually right click the transition area and click create transition preset, which can save you a little bit of time, and they show up in the user section. So for example, if I go to video transitions and user, I have a bunch saved for the wipe transition, and this appears to now apply to third-party transitions as well. However, normal effects in the effects tab or the open effects, if you apply that, you have nothing to create a preset from. There's no menu here under the effects window that will allow you to do it. There's no right-click menu. The three dots don't give it to you. Right-clicking the clip does not give you any create preset option, and it does not show up if you right-click the effect. You just have add to favorites. However, and I find that pretty ridiculous and behind on the times. However, with the new ResolveFX features and effects, you can now create essentially templates or presets in Fusion for all of the effects, which will make stuff as I mentioned, my buddy Patrick Sterling has been making incredibly simple to share, import, create, manage, all of that. And I really think this will revolutionize the market or lack thereof of third-party, you know, community-based ResolveFX and presets and all of that, because there hasn't been a ton, because it's been so difficult to create and manage them, that I think this makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to throw it over to him, who's going to kind of explain all of this and give you a rundown of why it's so important.
That's right, Adam, because in this newest release, Resolve has rolled out Fusion Effects templates. Previously, you could go into the Fusion page and make a template for transitions, titles, and generators, things like backgrounds. But now they have added effects templates. I can go into the Fusion page and make as complicated a node graph as I want to, with all sorts of crazy effects modifying my footage, and then I can save that as an effect that I can access on the edit page and drag and drop onto any new piece of footage. And this is really exciting. This can create some just cool effects or overlays like the included DSLR effect, but it can also be used to save editors hours and hours of time. I've modified a previous template I had made that can turn your gameplay clips into fully edited vertical videos for TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts in a matter of seconds. And right now I am editing the video showing off this preset, but I also have another preset that I can drag onto my footage, which places my camera down in the corner while I'm walking through this tutorial. This feature is incredibly powerful. I'm excited to dive in, and I know that there are users all over the world who are as excited. So definitely pay attention to this space over the next few months, because I am positive that there will be so many third-party effects coming onto the marketplace that will increase the quality of your videos exponentially with almost no effort.
Go check out his channel for lots more Resolve tutorials and presets and things like that. He's got a lot of good stuff over there. I did have one last feature I wanted to show you before I wrap up this video, and that is if you right-click a clip in the timeline, you can now render in place, which will render out, you know, you had your cache clip, which was kind of like timeline rendering in Premiere, and I was a huge fan of that back in the day. I made quite a few videos on it, and it's still more or less the same workflow, but if you start changing things even slightly, you end up having to re-render your cache for your entire timeline half the time, and that uses up a lot more disk space on your cache drive, which is especially problematic in big, you know, 8K or 4K projects. And sometimes you just have one particular effect that's like too gnarly to play in real time that you want to go ahead and render out because you're not going to mess with too much. And that is what the render in place button is for. You can choose your format, your codec, your resolution. If you, for whatever reason, are just, this is mainly for proxies. This goes in the proxy media location, and you click render, and this will allow you to render it out so you can continue playing in real time without, you know, needing to re-render this plugin or effect or whatever every time you play that part of the timeline. So really freaking cool. Overall, there's a ton to this update. Like I said, more that I didn't cover. I have a link to download it, as well as to BlackMagic's full walkthrough of all the updates, and they didn't even cover all the updates, in the description below, as well as a link to Patrick's channel as well. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more tech education and stream guides. I'm EposVox. I'll see you next time.